Good evening, everybody. Melissa, Scott,
Hi.
good to see y'all, and thank you for the birthday wishes. Birthday boy appreciates it muchly. Um,
Oh, I can't see with
Not
this.
a fan of my birthdays, not gonna lie. So it's just another day.
Sorry, I'm in the delay.
Yeah, yeah, getting a little
I
feedback there.
think it's gone.
Okay.
There's something's wrong with this. I don't know. I can't adjust and get things working like I want them to. But I do have my mic back. Yay!
Ellen's struggling a little bit tonight. She'll get it going here in a second. Hope both of y'all had a nice Christmas. Melissa, Sky. Ours was relatively quiet. Obviously, no kids. That keeps the noise down a little bit.
It was just a Monday in our household.
Yeah, we didn't do a whole lot. So
Mm-mm.
got a little work done around the house, around the yard. Did a little work on work. So, but it was a peaceful day, and thankful for it. Hope y'all and everybody on the replay crew did have a nice Christmas. Otherwise, um, I'm sitting there thinking it's awful quiet without Talou and Chunk making some noise somewhere. Did you
I can't.
anesthetize them?
I can't find Chunk.
Is he outside?
No, I think he's hiding down there with you, so he doesn't have to come up here.
Well, I want to make sure he's okay. So y'all excuse me for a second. I'm just going to make sure the pup's okay. I'll be right back.
All right. Hi. Wow, that's large. So, Sky Ricky, you have no snow. We never have. It is 64 degrees outside right now. Snow is not something that we normally get here um, on the southern coast of North Carolina. Every now and then we'll get like a huge ice storm or something like that, but snow doesn't happen often. So I would love snow, um, but I like it in small amounts. I was in living in DC during the blizzard of '96, and I had enough snow for, I don't know, my entire life. We can't find chalk. And Melissa, you went to Universal. Awesome. Had dinner, watched Doctor Who. That's very cool. I like Doctor Who. Very fun. Hey, Clay. He was inside when you were up here earlier. I just don't know where he is now. We lost the dog. Well, you get back on and I'll find him. Okay. Because you have topics. He has used him. He has used his knives once that I'm aware of, and he thought that they just worked beautifully. Um, I'm starting to worry. Where's my dog? Did you take him outside? No. You go back on, and I'll find him. Okay. He literally was just inside. I don't think he's. He could be in a closet or something. I'll find him. Um, but no. I made steak and green beans and such. Yeah, I think he just got shut in somewhere in a room. I just need to figure out which one it is. That's going to be the big question. I was just in that closet, so he's not there. I don't know. I know. He does that. Where's Clay? Clay, you back? Ring the doorbell. That's a good one. I think he's probably just locked in a room. Where are you going? Moffat. He's right here. I told you he was probably locked up. Got him. He was in my bathroom. But Sky, he did ring the doorbell. That okay, everybody's here. We got it. Okay.
You know, I get worried when things are too peaceful. And then I'm going around calling his name, don't hear anything like him. He doesn't come.
Well, he didn't.
Really unusual.
I don't know why he didn't like scratch at the door or say something. He speaks all the time.
Talk. Yeah. So I was starting to get worried he'd gotten out or something.
Well, I knew he hadn't because we haven't opened the door or gone outside since you were up here showering.
Well,
good job, Sky Ricky.
All is well.
That did it.
Yeah. All right, trying to catch up here. On Christmas, Sky Ricky, we have no snow at the moment, so it doesn't feel like Christmas or winter. I got to admit, I'm a little impressed. You're trying to talk me into moving up to Montana, telling me the winters are going to be really mild and short-lived. I like that. Melissa, we went to Universal, had dinner, watched Doctor Who. Interesting choice. I haven't watched Doctor Who in 20 years, 30 years. Been a while. Kind of almost forgot about it. But hope Green Bean enjoyed his Christmas. And I'm kind of mad at myself. I've told Ellen twice I was going to go online and order some more doggy treats, and then I get way late or sidetracked and forget about it. So you've got an order coming, though I do not know exactly when I'll.
That's what I mean, it's not. Melissa, I thought he was thinking about like Dr. Zhivago or the old Doctor Who.
Yeah, and it's not like, you know, I'm not at the computer and don't have time to do this order. I just doing the absent-minded thing. My only excuse.
Absent-minded professor.
Yeah. That has a lot of truth to it.
Mm-hmm. And I know.
And I think it's kind of like, because your mind is like a computer. As you get old, and a hard drive with memories, storage of memories, as you get older, you've got all these memories added to the hard drive. And obviously they're in color, so each one takes a huge amount of space. And, you know, you'll access them and then rewrite them, and you'll access them and rewrite them, so they kind of get fragmented. And the older you get, the longer it takes to put those memories back together. You know, you ever try to remember something, you have to stop for a second, then all of a sudden it starts coming back to you. And then the same thing with, you know, the immediate stuff. You got, if you're doing research in a quantitative area or get your PhD, you're so intellectually focused on a very narrow area, but in great depth. You spend a lot of RAM with this stuff going through your head, and some of the other processes get demoted in terms of priority. And some of the other background processes going on kind of get
like, when is Christmas? Like Clay told me Christmas was Saturday. That's why we weren't doing a Saturday show. And I was like, Christmas?
No, that's not true. That's absolutely and utterly not true. I didn't tell you Christmas was Saturday. I said Christmas Eve was
True.
Saturday.
But then
So
this
subtle
morning you told
difference.
me that we had Christmas Eve dinner on Friday. So
Yes.
maybe that threw me off. Like, what?
But
He even woke up. What did you woke up Sunday and told me Merry Christmas. And I was like, it's
it's not Christmas.
not Christmas, boo.
I was actually meaning to say Happy Day Before Christmas, which should be celebrated as well.
Which is Merry Christmas Eve. There's
Merry
a
Christmas Eve.
saying for that. Silly.
Well, at least I was saying happy something.
True.
I would get up
You didn't
every
wake up
morning
and
and tell somebody Happy Tuesday. Happy Boxer Day. I saw that.
I know there's
Who
a
was it?
thing about
Melissa.
that, and I'm not sure what that is.
Boxer Day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Boxer Day is another name for my birthday.
Well, yes, that's true.
And it's an old holiday, an old traditional holiday, and it basically, and I don't know how it ended up the day after Christmas. Well, yeah, I do. I guess if I think about it, after the Christmas leftovers and some of the gifts that really weren't wanted or needed, they were boxed up and donated to charities. So hence Boxing Day. You know, we might call it Return Day.
Gotcha. Things are
So,
too. Okay.
yeah, if I
don't
remember
know.
correctly, something along those lines. And did I use my knives? I've used them several times.
Have you? I know
Yeah.
you used them once, but I didn't know if you used them
Yeah.
again.
Most anything that I need to cut or slice, I'll at least use the small one. And then the big one, we'll buy sections of meat from like Costco. I use it to divide it up and
Cleave.
package it, cleave it up. Yeah, though I really don't do the heavy chopping. It makes an outstanding, slicer and dicer.
That they're working
Good
okay for you.
knives. Outstanding. Really good knives. I commend them highly.
I bet you commend me highly for buying them for you.
I commend you higher for finding them. Sky Ricky's got the right thought. If I want my dogs, I scream, "Who wants chicken?" Pretty good idea. And also ring the doorbell. Now, Chuck didn't bark while he was in the bathroom, did he, when the doorbell rang?
After like 30 seconds, he did. I thought he was under the bed, and I kept looking, going, if he's under the bed, is he stuck? But as y'all can tell, that's my bathroom door, and then the edge of my bed is right there. So I was like, is he just under there with one of his shoes? He got so confused with us messing up the schedule for the shows. He came up here one night. Was it Saturday or Sunday? Because we did the Friday.
Saturday, yeah.
And
he came up Saturday night.
He came up here and he was just like, "Where's my shoe?" He got on the bed. He was like, "Let's go. I'm ready." We're like, I was like, "Buddy, we're not tonight." He was like, "But tonight's the night."
Yeah, he seriously has a good idea of the schedule. I don't know, how he keeps a calendar, but the dude knows.
He doesn't. He'll be standing by the. We have a gate between the upstairs and downstairs, and he'll be standing there waiting right around 6:45. He's like, "It's time to go. Come on."
He does, and he's perfectly happy to go up there and sit and wait on his cue.
Mm-hmm.
So is Tallulah, but Chuck leads the way.
Oh yeah, Tallulah says when I'm like, "Tallulah, come on," she's like, "Okay." Chuck's like, "I'm getting a chew. Let's go."
And then Melissa, the new Doctor Who Christmas special. Didn't know they had a new Doctor Who Christmas special. I'm obviously not keeping up enough with some of these things. Haven't heard anything about it. You,
No.
Helen? Have to look into it. And then Sky Ricky giving her version of Boxing Day. It's when people go shopping after Christmas and things are cheaper and they fight over the stuff like boxing. maybe a more apt and accurate current description than mine, ignoring the historical nuances.
I mean, definitions of words change every day, Clay.
People. You know, I say people don't change. And in their heart of hearts, their motivations, their very nature, they don't change. But in terms of some of the temperaments, you know, some of the mannerisms, personal discipline, those kind of things, they do change greatly.
All right.
All right. So tonight is Tuesday night Q&A.
Anybody have any questions
that people have or send in? I saw, one that kind of ended up being directed toward me, talking about the end of the tightening cycle and what did I think the implications were for the Fed stopping hiking rates and beginning to cut rates. Well, that's a tightening cycle, what most people call a tightening cycle. I think my main point is, well, just thinking about tightening cycles, most of them last 20 to 24 months. The Fed started hiking rates somewhere around March of 22, and through July of this year, hiked rates 525 basis points, or 5.25%. So putting this in perspective, this is the most aggressive hiking regime we've ever seen. And this little graph just shows you previous hiking regimes where the Fed hiked rates, and obviously the nice big thick red one is the current one starting in 2022. And as you can tell, it's higher, faster than any other previous regime. So that's different. That's almost alarmingly different, because the consequence of that, you remember at first when inflation started, everybody was going, it's transitory. It's not going to last. It's not going to hold up. Well, all of a sudden, the Fed realized that inflation is hammering people. It's getting near 9 or 10%. And so they were trying to play catch up. Well, in playing catch up and hiking rates so far, so fast, they really didn't give the market any time to adjust. The most aggressive cycle ever. And so, we are 22 months in this cycle, which is about normal for the Fed to start, cutting. Timing wise, we're on track for a rate cut if you look at the history. But there are flies in the ointment. First of all, as you can tell, this is not a typical tightening cycle. We actually are in the middle of a credit shock, an interest rate credit shock. And that's what makes this so different. And that's what many are ignoring or blissfully unaware of. Rates have increased from 0.1% to 5.25, 5.5%. That's a 5,200% increase. That's massive, particularly in that amount of time. This absolutely, that kind of speed, rapidity, and amount of hike absolutely destroys any other comparison. So credit shock, what are we seeing? Well, we've talked about personal credit usage has soared, corporate debt usage has soared, and this is the 800-pound gorilla that most people ignore.
Can I interrupt you real quick there,
Yeah,
Clay?
sure.
You're probably going to get to this. I mean, I haven't seen your notes, but with this trend of inflation or the percentage rate going so high so fast and the market having such an awesome week, was it last week, a week before?
Yeah. Good
How does
couple
that
weeks.
happen? How's that happen?
Well, I've talked all along for the past year that the market desperately wants rate cuts. The market wants to go back to QE and ZIRP. QE,
Okay,
quantitative
thank
easing.
you.
Quantitative easing. We've talked about QE and QT, quantitative easing, quantitative tightening. Quantitative easing is when the Fed is buying a lot of securities and throwing a lot of cash out in the market. Banks hold $100 million in treasury bonds. They sell them to the Federal Reserve. So now they've got $100 million in cash that they can invest somewhere, the market. And the Fed takes those bonds out of circulation. QT is where the Fed, now give me just a second here. I can put this in some context.
Okay, but just while you're doing that, to me, it seems like an inverse result. It doesn't make sense, especially with all the debt you were just talking about. The credit card's been taken out, the percentages rates being so high, people can't afford anything, all the defaults. How is the market going up? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
All right. First of all, now I wish this went further back, but the Fed basically has maintained very, very little on its balance sheet in terms of buying assets.
Can you blow that up at all? Thank you.
The Fed will buy bonds or sell bonds to pull cash out of the market or put cash in the market. Just follow the direction of the money. If the Fed is buying bonds from the market, it's throwing cash out in the market. So it's increasing liquidity. If the Fed is selling bonds back to the market, it's taking cash out of the market, decreasing liquidity. But the activities of the Fed have been generally just keeping the money supply where it wants it.
Okay, I got one more question because I can't read. What is the bottom? I know bottom's years,
This
I
is
think.
Tom. This is
Okay,
time.
then what, when it goes up, is that more buying of bonds?
Yes, this is the Fed's balance sheet, the amount of inventory it has in its balance sheet.
Okay.
So the Fed historically has done very little. Well, starting around 2009, end of 2008, 2009, we had the subprime crisis. And the Fed started the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, where they went and they bought all the toxic waste of the banks because the banks couldn't sell these assets. Their value was so low.
Okay.
They were subprime loans. They were trash bonds, bonds of companies, of banks about to go bankrupt. So banks holding these assets, remember, I've said repeatedly that banks don't handle losses well. Well, this was the Fed's solution to banks holding these troubled positions. They bought the positions at par value, at face value, at full value from the banks. And this is kind of where it started. So, the Fed some of them mature, some of them go bankrupt, Fed writes them off, whatever. And then starting around 2009, quantitative easing began. Where quantitative easing is where the Fed goes into the market and is buying treasury or agency bonds in order to try to provide more liquidity to the market. And that's the little rises you see here, where it did a couple different programs. And then starting about 13, 14, the Fed started getting a lot more aggressive and even buying mortgage-backed securities, mortgages. There were some months when they would buy over 150% of new issuance. So they were buying stuff left and right. And the balance sheet is just ballooning.
Is that because they figured the 2000 whatever to 2008-9 stuff was over and these were more secure?
Well, the economy was still pretty sucky. There just wasn't a whole lot of very real growth, and they wanted to keep mortgage rates down. So remember the teeter-totter?
Mm-hmm.
You've got the price of the mortgage or bond,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got the market interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as the price goes up, the rate goes down. And so the Fed was trying to keep mortgage rates down by buying these mortgages and causing the market to raise the price of them, forcing interest rates lower. And so it was done to try to stimulate the home market. Well, what happened to housing prices? Yeah, not just this, but this. We got a housing bubble. And particularly when you see the stimulus and funding, the buying of assets that the Fed did when COVID hit. And even after COVID.
Why would the Fed buy assets, that many assets at COVID? What
To
is
force the interest rates down quickly.
Okay. That seems like not a good idea.
And to buy troubled assets.
Still seems like not a good idea.
I think the proof's in the pudding. It didn't end up being such a good idea. We're all paying for it now. But this increase in the Fed's balance sheet, we generically refer to it as QE. Now you'll notice it peaks somewhere here around March, April of 22.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the Fed started hiking interest rates and quit buying securities in the market and started allowing the securities in its portfolio to mature and roll off.
And is that also when people were buying less bonds, government bonds, and
yeah, prices started rising because particularly the Fed was buying less. Some international investors started buying less. So you saw the prices on bonds fall, which made their interest rates rise, teeter-totter. And we talked about, for example, May or June of 20, there was a 30-year bond issued by the US government. By May of 22, June of 22, it was trading at 50 cents on the dollar. So if you bought $100 million of that bond at 1.25%, the price dropped 50% in order to make that yield look like 4%, whatever it was at the time. So just a massive, massive loss. Well,
does everybody understand how that works? Again, I mean, I know that Clay brings up a lot of concepts, and I have a hard time following the concept through different financial scenarios. Does everybody get what he's talking about? Anybody got anything?
Give him a second to type.
Okay.
So the bottom line idea from this point here in '08 through the peak here, we're going to generically refer to it as QE, where the Fed is pumping liquidity into the market, buying securities out of the market, spending the cash, printing the cash, and adding liquidity to the market. From where
They're
it
just
peaks,
infusing the
where
market
hold
with
on a
money.
second.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Where it peaks and drops down, we call QT, quantitative tightening. So the Fed owns all these bonds, and when one of them matures, it does not go out and buy another bond. It just keeps that money out of the market. So this is actually reducing the money supply in the market. Before that, almost all of this is increasing the money supply. So you've got QE increasing the money supply, you've got QT decreasing the money supply. So the market loves QE, free money, low interest rates. It reduces their risk. And who doesn't like free money?
I do.
But there's a problem with that, a problem that ultimately will have consequences. And that's where we got 10% inflation from. You had all the stimulus payments, you had the soaring increase in the money supply. Well, boom, you had 10% inflation.
So when people are talking about, I watch a few financial channels besides yours just to do a little bit of research. People are freaking out about something's going to happen. This is not sustainable where we've been. I mean, they were talking about that in 2021. Is this that from 2020 on? Is this a scenario that they're looking at going, nobody can keep this up?
Well, I don't know exactly what they were talking about, either the higher interest rates or just the level of money being pumped into the economy.
Both. And then also the fact that inflation is so high and wages have not gone up.
But we'll talk about that a little bit as we
Okay.
go on into the show. So I'm going to hold that part of the question. But in terms of interest rates, historically, in terms of free market and reasonably pricing risk, remember, an interest rate is the cost of money to acquire money, a risk-free cost. So risk-free because it's generally considered to be default-free. U.S. Treasury T-bills default-free because the government can always print more. And they're very short term, so there's very little interest rate risk, inflation risk. So the true pure time value of money historically is somewhere around 4%. Right now, the short term rate is around 5.25. So it's a little bit on the high end. Mortgages were 8.5%, which is a little bit on the high end. 7% is about the norm. And in fact, they've kind of dropped to somewhere near 7.5% now. So historically, rates are not high. Interest rates are only high because we have been conditioned for the past 13 years to 3% mortgage rates, 4% mortgage rates, which is utterly ridiculous.
In the early 80s, wasn't it like in the high teens, low 20s?
Mortgage rates got up to about 13, 14%. The short-term rate got up to 15. Some of the bank rates got up to 20, 21. I know some people who bought like a 10-year CD at 21%. So just a word to the wise, if you get a chance to lock in 21% from a treasury or a very, very solid bank, I recommend that highly. But I don't think we'll see that again. But yeah, people have just freaked out with these rates because, like I say, you go from 0.1% to 5.25%. That's over a 5,000% increase. That's huge, especially when it comes so quick. Hence what I call a credit shock. People didn't have a chance to adapt. Companies didn't have a chance to adjust or change up their balance sheets or refinance their bonds, their loans, whatever. Credit has just dried up. Banks, nobody wanted to make loans. Liquidity in the market dried up. So there were a number of systemic effects that weren't necessarily so acute in previous tightening cycles. So you have to look not only that, interest rates rose, you have to look at the speed, rapidity, and the degree to which interest rates rose. And that makes this particular regime stand out on its own. Terribly unusual. It's kind of like, what's the old Chris Christopherson song? We've never been this far before.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's why, in terms of making, projections, I'm kind of a little bit hesitant. Secondly, that's one reason why the market is so desperate for QE to return. Some of the participants realize the risk we're in. I think the Federal Reserve realizes the risk we're in, or the complications we're in, complicated situation we're in. I'll get it right in a minute. And, I think they're a little afraid of the consequences.
I was going to ask you, is QE a good idea right now? I mean, is that?
I don't think QE was ever a good idea. QE is just a forcible mispricing of the market. It's a manipulation of the rates. It causes a mispricing between risk and reward. It causes misallocation of investments, favoring certain financial investments over, say, manufacturing and agriculture and other vital industries. It encourages corporate repurchases versus corporate research. The payoffs are much quicker.
So this, from what I'm seeing, I guess they've dumped. I'm trying to figure out why the market did so well recently.
Because they're expecting QE to return. They're expecting rates to be cut. So that's what they wanted.
Isn't that supposed to happen in like March?
Well, that's when it maybe will begin.
Okay.
But we're not sure how fast they will cut. There's, certain guesses and expectations in that regard, and we'll look at that as we go through.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself again.
So, looking at where we are today, why maybe are cuts coming? Are cuts coming is one question. Are they beneficial is another. So why are they coming? Well, we've seen individuals robbing their savings, their 401ks. They're maxing out their credit cards at 28% interest and spending at levels and rates they can't afford to pay. If somebody is strapped to the gills to just buy their food, pay their rent, car payment, these kind of things, and they're having to buy groceries on their credit card. Well, where are they going to get money not only to buy groceries going forward, but pay off the increased balance and interest cost on their credit card? We have not seen those consequences yet. Student loans. A lot of people were worried about student loans, and now we see after the first month that 40% of the debtors did not pay, are not paying. And we've seen videos of TikTok and Instagram, whatever, of people going, I'm not going to pay. I'm just not going to pay. What are they going to do? Keep me from buying a house that I can't afford anyway? And that's the approach of a lot of these people. Well, Good luck to them because the government will start garnishing their wages.
True.
And then they won't have any choice or recourse.
They better all become self-employed.
Even then, they'll seize assets. The
They don't have
government,
any assets.
well, they won't have. And you can't ignore corporations. They're still in the process of having 3.5% junk bonds roll over at 7.5%, 8.5%, double, sometimes triple what they were paying. Roughly 10-15% of all the corporations in the US are what I refer to as zombies. Their leveraged loan debt is due over the next 2 years is larger than ever. And roughly half of that is pretty damn risky. Companies that are kind of on the edge, we would say B- rated or less. So you can expect, bottom line, you can expect corporate bankruptcies to continue and formerly
Apparently,
healthy companies to struggle.
I was reading, I don't know, a couple of days ago that the corporate bankruptcies are at the same rate or the same amount as 2008.
Yeah, they're increasing at a faster rate than they were in 2007 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you talk about corporate bankruptcy, that's jobs lost. That's people losing their jobs. The other segment of the economy, we've talked about individuals are kind of screwed. We've talked about corporations are kind of screwed. Government, even more good news here. I'm sorry, Brentwood is not here. She always enjoys this so much.
Yes, she does.
But there's even more good news here. Talking about the government, U.S. debt over the next couple days will blow past 34 trillion. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the U.S. debt clock.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. This is a page which tracks in live time the U.S. national debt. Right now, we're at 33,949 billion. So, debt per citizen, $101,000. Debt per taxpayer, $260,000. So you basically, as a taxpayer, on average, the average taxpayer is paying the interest on $259,000 in debt. How cool is that? You've got a second mortgage and you don't even realize it.
Make that a little bit bigger. Okay.
So here, debt per taxpayer.
Yep. Is there somewhere on there where what the interest on that is per year? Neighbors.
Silly neighbors.
They have that loud backup beep on their golf cart.
Let's see, interest. I thought it was on here somewhere. But it may not.
Total personal debt.
Total U.S. total interest paid. That's on the total debt for individuals, I believe.
Look at that.
I don't think they have
look at what those banks are making. Credit card debt. I mean, student loan debt per student. Credit card debt per household.
Yeah, there's some interesting little information on here. You could get on this and study it for a little while.
Okay, go down to the national assets. Is that going down?
No, going up.
Okay. Corporate assets, everything's going up. Trade deficit, definitely not.
Social Security liability, going up. Medicare liability going up. Unfunded liabilities. This is a great one.
What does that even mean?
212 trillion. It means that we have, as a government, promised to people currently in existence about $212 trillion in services via Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, VA benefits that we have not funded, that we haven't put money aside
Lovely.
for. So in addition to the debt, the 34 trillion in debt we already have,
The liability per citizen is $631,858.
that's an unfunded liability, plus your portion of the current existing national debt.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's.
And this is per citizen, so this includes kids. Family of
Yeah.
4, you're looking at $2.5 million.
You know who it doesn't include? Illegal aliens.
No, does not.
U.S. foreclosures, 117,000.
Yeah. So there's a lot of information on there. But just, to the more immediate reality, it's obviously a lot of long-term reality there, but U.S. debt is going to blow past 34 trillion here before long. That compares to 27 trillion in debt when Biden took over. Total federal revenues, 275 billion. Last month, revenues were 275 billion. So the government borrowed 314 billion. That's a 26% jump. We're borrowing more than we're receiving. Now, how does that work for an individual when they do that? Every month,
Not so
consistently,
good.
for years.
They go bankrupt.
Now, people say government can't go bankrupt. It can print more money. Well, who pays for that? That would be you in terms of inflation. But we'll look at that a little bit more in a minute. Outlays last month were 598 billion. Remember,
What are
it took
outlays?
in how much did the government spend?
Okay.
So 598 billion. They took in 275 billion. So, put this in perspective. The whole economy for the past year, from third quarter 22 through the third quarter 23, the whole economy, GDP, grew $414 billion. The increase in government debt over that same time was 1.4 trillion. So at the current rate of borrowing, which will increase with an increased interest expenses and additional spending growth, will result in at least $2 trillion in new debt this fiscal year. We're already in fiscal year 24 for the U.S. government.
But it's like, isn't it $2 trillion just to pay the interest?
It's getting there. Some people estimate that the government debt this year will be between $4 and $6 trillion. So my $2 trillion is very conservative, extremely conservative. Now, since 2019, interest on the debt has increased over 75%. To compare that to other expenses, Social Security expenses increased 40%, which is rocking. Medicare increased 30%, which is rocking. So interest on the debt this past month was $80 billion, surpassing the amount spent on defense at $66 billion. Medicare still leads the way at $93 billion. Medicaid was at $50 billion. So interest on the debt is now the second largest government expense. And it's only going to get worse, far worse. The average weighted interest rate on U.S. Treasury debt was 3.1%, which was up from 2.2 a year ago. So the average interest rate we're paying right now is about 3.1, 3.2% versus 2.2 a year ago. Now, much of this lower, cheaper debt continues to roll off and is being refinanced at higher rates. So, like I said, more good news. Now, what's the solution? I mean, how many of you really believe that Congress is capable of cutting the deficit?
They're not.
You know, before long, Wall Street is going to be increasingly concerned about this and is going to have a chorus of its own demanding balance sometime soon. Powell, I hope, will make it clear that real rate cuts are off the table with deficits of this size. So who wins with the government? You know, is it austerity? Does the government really make severe cuts? Does it increase taxes on the rich? Yes. It cuts and it increases taxes. And people say, you know, tax the rich. Flip side is you could tax the rich at 100% of their wealth, and that would only be enough to fund the government for, I believe, a little less than a year. And in so doing, you would have utterly destroyed savings and capital in this country. Would have destroyed the economy. So the rich really don't have enough money to cover debt of this size and amount. So when we talk about, you know, tax the rich, that is just a misnomer for tax the rich, tax the middle class, and tax the poor.
I was wondering, like, oh, yeah, I know, your only hope. I was looking like how much money, you know, the U.S. does in foreign aid every year. About $50 billion is what I saw. I don't believe that number. It says 75 billion, 75.4 to Ukraine.
Yeah,
why don't we take care of us?
That won't even fund interest payments for 1 month.
I know, but why don't we just take care of America first? Like, why don't we stop the bleeding?
You know, that debate is going to have to start sometime soon. And it's going to be an ugly debate. Because think about it. What percentage of the country, the population, receives benefits from the U.S. government?
I have no idea.
Last I saw a couple of years ago, I didn't try to find anything more current, was 49%. So you've got
my door's open.
So you've got nearly 50%, or at least 50% of the country receiving money from the government. Everybody loves free money. So
right?
Are they going to vote to cut their free money?
No.
You know, that's a big issue. And even the people who don't get the free money, a lot of them think, you know, we'll be hurting people if we cut it. So there's not even any guarantee that the other 50% will vote to cut.
That doesn't make any sense though, Clay, because we are giving a minimum life wage or whatever to 10 million illegal immigrants that just walked across the border.
Yeah, you know, I don't know about all that. I'm just saying, what are the chances Congress votes to cut anything?
They cannot start giving Teslas to low income families. That was one thing. And then set up the charging stations. And that was a bit of pork.
Yeah.
Back in September.
Again, are they going to vote to cut anything? That's the question. Not should they. It's will they. is the
They
question.
have to. They have to.
They have to. They probably couldn't get elected because these people vote.
That's why
So
people need to watch your channel. You can explain why this does not work, why you cannot sustain this and have a country.
yeah, the math doesn't lie. You know,
Mm-mm.
it's and you know, in terms of the market, I expect the market to probably, you know, trend up over the next couple months. I even took some of my money and put back in the market this past week.
Did you?
Yeah, and you know, I'm sitting here saying, you know, there's more pain ahead, but temporarily, you know, as the Fed generates more excitement about the rate cuts, the market has been longing for rate cuts, praying for rate cuts. The Fed is going to grant them their wish, most likely. Now, you know, when I say most likely and talk about the market wanting rate cuts, this is the WIRP graph, World Interest Rate Probability, and it's basically an implied probability of rate cuts. And it's this bottom half that we're looking at. You can look at the table here. But here's where we are now with the rates. And what this graph shows is by the at the end of January meeting, and particularly by the March meeting, end of the March meeting, rates will be cut probably 3/4 of a point, 3/4 to 1 point. There's over a 77% probability, according to the market, according to the futures market, interest rate futures market, that rates will be cut by 75 basis or 100 basis points by the end of March. And then you can tell for most every other meeting in May, June, July, this would be September, November, rate cuts continue. Now, honestly, projections this far out have not been very accurate.
That's not even sustainable, is it? With the market.
It doesn't matter whether
Market.
it's sustainable, it depends on whether or not it happens. Right now, I don't think the Fed is terribly concerned about sustainability in terms of, you know, the consequences, because there, in my opinion, there is no good decision. If
Is this from our good friend Yellen?
no,
Hmm.
if they don't cut rates and continuing them high, then there's a really good chance there's going to be a modestly severe credit crisis. Think severe recession.
But if they lower,
If Go
uh,
ahead.
if they lower the rates,
If
which
they
is
lower the rates,
it's
there's a
still.
good chance
Go
there's a
ahead.
good chance we see inflation again. We see inflation
And
start to rise.
and then all of all of
And then
this
we
leads somewhere bad. I mean,
yeah,
there's
and then we repeat what we've done. And in terms of inflation, if you look at certain kind of leading indicators like the Baltic Dry Goods Index, I don't have a picture of it, but that's an index of international shipping rates, container ships. And I don't know if y'all have been paying attention, but container ships have been being attacked in the
Chuck.
Red Sea. Iran's threatening to shut down the Strait of Hormuz.
Yep.
So shipping rates have shot up high. Transportation costs are going up. Oil has started turning back up a little bit. Don't know exactly what's going to happen with that, but it's volatile. But I think over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, it'll be higher than it is now.
Chunk Papa, I
So
can't pick you up.
you've got some pretty strong influences that are indicating higher prices ahead. because we import a ton of stuff. And if the cost to import that greatly increases, that's going to be reflected in the prices. Not only that, but the dollar's weakening. The dollar has weakened and continues to weaken.
And companies can't keep up with paying their employees the rate of inflation.
No, and that's just kind of getting started.
Yeah. And it's not because they're greedy. It's just the business will not stay afloat.
Well, people, everybody really is mostly concerned with their own situation, and that's understandable. If you're struggling paying bills, your situation is of paramount importance to you, not some shipping cost on the other side of the world. But it would be wise for everybody to become somewhat familiar with the notion that inflation is poverty. It's the growth engine for poverty. Okay, something everybody should be familiar with is called the Hume-Cantillon effect.
One more time.
This is the Hume-Cantillon effect.
Okay.
This is the idea that when money is being printed and printed and printed, when the printing presses are going brrr, the one receiving the money the last suffers the most. They are the loser. So when the printing presses are running, who receives the money first?
The government.
The government, the politicians.
Mm-hmm.
So the politicians get to spend it before its inflationary effects are fully realized. So they get to spend that newly printed money at the old price.
And send it to other countries and all that stuff.
No, just in this economy. Let's just localize it for now. So they get to spend it before its inflationary effects are fully realized. They spend it at today's value. So having more money to spend on stuff on the same amount of goods that's in existence and not increasing production, well, that's the very definition of inflation. More money chasing the same amount of goods, more money chasing fewer goods. So as the government prints more money and buys stuff, they do that without increasing production one bit. So this is the cause of systematic inflation, which months after, years after inflation has risen, you may get a pay raise. You may get a wage increase. Well, those increases oftentimes don't even cover the past rate of inflation, and certainly won't cover the future rate of inflation till you get another pay raise. So these wage increases also themselves are inflationary because they increase the cost of production without increasing production. The worker, so you have kind of a chicken and an egg problem, in terms of spiraling inflation. The higher prices go, the more people's wages need to rise. The more people's wages rise, the higher inflation goes. So they kind of feed on each other. It's kind of a cyclical loop, chicken and egg problem. But the main idea is that the worker, the poor, the middle class is always last, always on the tail end of the flow of money. And those on the lower end of the pay scale get hurt the worst, as a larger percentage of their income is used to cover energy expenses, food expenses, housing expenses, and these usually are the most volatile and rapidly rising expenses.
So they basic needs.
Basic needs. So, that's what everybody needs to understand long term. Melissa, the dangers of making decisions based on concerns of getting elected or reelected. That's a practical reality. I mean, these politicians live for getting reelected. That bottom
Well,
line
yeah,
is the most important thing to them.
they don't have to work that many days in a year.
Well, no, but that's one reason why I get so mad and irritated at the dumbing down of the schools, because an
Ugh.
uneducated populace is much easier to rule. It doesn't think for itself as much. It can't think for itself as much. It doesn't understand as much the complexity of what's going on. And I know that a lot of what I try to explain or communicate is a little bit complicated. I try to, shuck it down to the cob, but it's still probably a little different than what most people have heard or maybe even care to hear, because it's
That's
not
why
always exciting, fun, dramatic.
that's why you got my dumb ass here to ask questions. I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, you're certainly not done.
Well, thank you.
Not having a, graduate degree in economics doesn't, we've got some pretty stupid economists out there. There's
Yeah.
there's a school of economics called modern monetary, theory, which basically holds that the government can spend all it wants. It can print all it wants with no real negative repercussions. Cliff Notes version.
That's just not true.
I think that's, yeah. I think that history has shown that to be certainly not the case, but they can make a nuanced argument that it can.
Nuanced and true. I mean, I can, bullshit
Well,
anybody to think of anything.
Understand this is poetry to politicians,
I
because
get
it
that.
excuses them spending on whatever they want to as much as they want to. So you've got this particular school of economics guiding the government, and the government is more than willing to listen to this beautiful siren music. What's the Greek mythology? You had the music that would lure sailors to their death.
Yeah, the sirens.
Yeah, the sirens of, I can't think of that.
Siren
Anyway,
song. I don't know what the
yeah, you
place
get
is.
the idea.
Mhm.
And of course, I operate on a different theory, that you can't borrow indefinitely, that ideas have consequences, and that sound money matters. Looking through history, we even talked about this when we first started talking about crypto and Bitcoin, sound money. And we looked at the Roman Empire and how the emperors started, had a coin that was revered and respected throughout the trading empire, most of the known world at that time. And then, successive emperors would come along and clip the coin, reduce its gold content bit by bit by bit. And by the end, that coin was just, nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to do business in it. It was disrespected. They kept weakening it. So when I say the dollar is on a severe downward trend, has been weakened, is going to weaken further, that has consequences.
You mean like putting it through a shredder? Is that a correct analogy?
Yeah, but putting it through a shredder and trying to take each piece and buy something with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Melissa,
Melissa,
we're living in a horror movie. I don't want to be hugely negative or pessimistic, but there are things out there that make me cautious, very cautious. I do think, we've been through hard times before. The 70s, the economy sucked. Inflation was raging. The Soviet Union was on the rise. We were weakening. We were becoming the laughing stock of the world. We bounce back. So I always have hope. But I want my hope rooted in a reasonable understanding of the current circumstances and what the risks are. I believe everybody should have a plan A, but also a plan B. Have some understanding of what can happen, what's likely to happen, what's not likely, but what your risks are. The whole theme of mine is understand your risk so you can manage them better. It's not that, my knowledge or insights are perfect, that my crystal ball is perfect. I will never claim that. Never has been. I like my track record with my own investments. I'm pretty comfortable with what I do, but it's not for everybody. And I certainly don't try to present it as gospel like some people do. Just my encouragement is to listen to what I say, do your own research or look up your own information and see if what I say has weight. If it's a valid circumstance, thought, risk, whatever. Is it mitigated by something else that I ignore?
Yeah, and if it makes sense to you in your life. I mean, there are some things that make sense to people in a situation that doesn't make sense to other people in other situations. I mean, this is not financial advice, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's just, the rantings of an old guy on his birthday.
I did not tell them how old you were, by the way.
That's okay. 52.
52.99 plus tax, tag, and title.
Title.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's, and like I say, we have hiked rates so fast, so far, never been this far before. We don't know exactly, or we don't have anything in the past to gauge what the impact will be. I'm expecting, a credit issue. I'm seeing credit issues develop. Credit rate shocks, not just, the normal tightening cycle issues. But whether the Fed can lower rates fast enough to mitigate that, I don't know. Whether they will, I don't know.
And all those stores did that great buy now, pay later thing. Yeah. Layaway, but not. You go ahead and get the thing, but it's not really credit. It's a strange thing, I guess, yeah. Over 30% of those are in default.
Yeah, and think about it. People were like, "Oh, retail sales were pretty good." They're a little bit less than 22, but better than what we were expecting. Well, when you think 30, 40, 50% of those were on this go ahead and take the gift and you can pay us later thing
without a credit card.
Without a credit card. This is just extra debt they're taking on. Well, when you see somebody bragging about retail sales holding up, you got to take that with a grain of salt. You've got to think, well, did they really? Or did somebody just see something free that they could go ahead and give to their kid and know that, later on they don't have to pay for it and they probably won't be chased down and arrested for it.
Exactly.
So does that mean retail sale? That was a retail sale? No.
No, that was stealing.
When you've got 30 or 40% of people defaulting on their student loans, when you've got 30 or 40% of people defaulting on their buy now, pay later plans, when you've got credit card maxed out, credit card debt soaring, when you've got bankruptcies increasing.
And corporate bankruptcies and personal. Mortgage defaults.
Car payment defaults.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to start thinking this is looking more and more like a credit crisis, which I've been warning about for months. Again, this doesn't mean it's going to turn into 2008.
It might be worse. Sorry. You're trying not to be pessimistic.
No, I want to be realistic. And so in order to explain some of this, I have to go into some length about it. But it looks like Jay Powell is trying to accommodate Biden, help him get reelected, because Jay
Yep.
Powell has said repeatedly for the past year and a half that higher for longer, higher for longer. And I actually took him at his word. But his comments, a few weeks ago about, we may be done hiking, maybe time for a cut, was such an abrupt shift.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and Trump has come out very critical of Jay Powell, said he was the worst hire ever, and he would, replace him if he was elected. So I don't think, my opinion, I don't think Jay Powell is actually looking forward to Trump getting elected. But, seeing some of these potential credit crisis events on the horizon, is he thinking maybe it's better to have 4 or 5% inflation for a longer period of time than spark a credit crisis? I don't really know.
My issue is that Biden doesn't have a plan to get us out of this. He's not laid out any plan to fix except fund Ukraine more. I mean, that's all I've heard out of him.
It is his spending plans that have contributed to a lot.
I know. I'm just saying, I've heard like Vivek, I've heard Trump, I've heard even Kennedy have a plan about how to get us out of this crisis. But I haven't heard anything from Biden. Nothing.
Well, Biden doesn't even admit we're in a crisis. He keeps arguing that all is well.
It's not well.
And even with the government spending, got to give credit where credit is due. Trump had that initial huge COVID stimulus payment, and that was a big component into you remember you saw the chart, the money supply, the Fed chart jump up. A big part of that was Trump. Biden came in, had another one of those. He started the plan where you are paid to stay at home, not to work, not to produce. Again, inflation is more money chasing fewer goods.
I could be wrong, but they were
when people are being paid to stay home and not go to work for a year, production drops, money supply increases. Classical definition of the cause of inflation. So if Jay Powell does start to cut, how far and fast will he go? If rates do drop, we've still got a bubble in real estate. We've still got a bubble in asset prices, stocks, car prices are still through the roof.
Still got inflation.
Yeah, if rates are cut, if they're cut 100 basis points, 200 basis points by the end of the year, some of these bubbles not only are going to persist, but you'll see, for example, the stock market. I would expect the stock market to do really, really well. There's a lot of money on the side. And if Jay Powell starts cutting aggressively, you could see a lot of this money turn around and be dumped in the market. QT could come to a halt, and you would, practically have QE start again. Government spending is cranking. Fed's going to have to increase the money supply to pay for it. Everything will seem good until all of a sudden it's not. Because sooner or later, stupid will hurt.
So you're saying I need to go ahead and put the nest egg into the mutual fund and not wait?
Well, I'm not going to necessarily recommend that for others. I have started putting some of mine in. Like I said, last week, but I'm still very cautious. If I see some kind of flitter or Twitter or whatever, I'm pulling it back out.
I was talking about my grandfather.
Yeah.
Is it time
Yeah.
to
We're
throw it
not,
in?
yeah,
Okay, sorry.
we're not going to go into specifics here.
Okay. I didn't know if you knew what I was talking about or not. I was just like, okay.
Um, I tell people what I do. I don't give that out as investment advice. I don't necessarily recommend that they follow me. I've tried to talk to some people about beginning investing $50 or $100 a month. Go ahead and put that in a stock mutual fund, a good stock mutual fund. Even if you have $200 in and the market drops 20%, it's
You're
not
fine.
going to hurt you in the long run. You're still fine. But just being in investing, you'll buy more shares if the market drops at that lower price, you'll be fine. Now, if you're a year or two from retiring and a 20% drop would hurt your ability to retire, that's a whole different ball game. You've got to be more cautious in something like that. But for most people who have, 5, 10, 15, 20 years till they need the money, I would go ahead and start investing.
Yeah, it's kind of
My
like
suggestion, if I were them.
the insurance. I used to life insurance, and we had a few agents who would take somebody who had a $50,000 payout life insurance that was whole life. Yes, they had money in it, not nearly as much as their payout, and they were 78 years old and sick, and they would flip them into a different policy. Like, you just cost them 25,000. What are you doing? Because you have to at least be 2 years, live 2 years to even get the majority of that payout. I don't know. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, if you're in a position where you're retiring, you need the money, you could take a loss, then don't start throwing it into the market. Right? I was trying to do an analogy. I suck at those too.
That's all right. Anybody have any questions on anything that I've mentioned so far or discussed? Please, if I say something that doesn't make sense, don't explain something well, let me know. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
And clearly, there are no stupid questions. I ask them all the time. So,
Sky Ricky, do you believe in life insurance?
I believe it exists.
Yeah, as an investment or a future retirement vehicle, I generally don't. I can come up with far better options for the individual. Now, for example, my daughter got married, had 2 babies, and her husband bought a life insurance policy. I don't know the details, didn't get involved, but I'm like, that's prudent. He has responsibilities. She's being a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids, and he's the provider, the sole income. If something were to happen to him, that's a risk, and it's a big risk for my daughter and her 2 babies.
That would
So
take care of their house. They would be fine.
yeah,
They could continue to live at
the
least
idea,
comfortably.
yeah, the idea of insurance is fundamentally the way I believe is to cover risk you can't afford to take yourself, like home insurance. I live at the beach. My big risk is a Cat 5 hurricane. Hits, here or 50 miles north of us because of their counter circular swirl and the storm surge. So I weigh that. My insurance premiums are a little expensive, but I have a larger deductible because out of my pocket, if something happens, $1,000 or a $5,000 deductible in terms of the total value of my house being paid for is very small.
Nothing.
But it saves me $1,000 a year on my premiums, $700 a year on my premium, something like that. And to me, if I can do that for 5, 10, 15, 20 years without ever having a claim on that policy, that's money in my pocket. Same with my car. I have higher deductibles because I don't wreck much. I haven't been in a wreck in 30 years. So with insurance, to me, the real question is this a risk I cannot afford to take? If it is insurance, pay somebody else to take that risk. But you want to take as much of that risk as you can, because ultimately it's a bet with an insurance company. And the insurance companies statistically are going to win. They can't stay in business if they don't.
Yeah. They don't, their primary interest is not you. I promise.
Yeah. There are some good agents out there that try to do it right. And they may differ with me on that. And that's okay. Got no problem with that.
Yeah, Clay and I are both
Still haven't.
licensed.
Yeah, I've taken every exam in the financial industry I can, but I'm not with any company.
No, I meant insurance. We're not with anybody, but
yeah, I don't inhabit. Now, Melissa, I have some life insurance through my normal insurance company, but with the bundling, I'm not paying any additional for it. With the bundling, I'm not paying any additional for it. Not sure exactly what that is, but if you've got risk that you need to cover, great. If you don't, maybe that's money that would be better off in your pocket. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying you should not carry insurance. But my advice to everybody, including myself, Ellen, whoever, is you cover the risk you can't afford to take. Now, Green Bean, he probably expects to be well cared for in the event of your passing.
And
so
in his stroller and his walks and his beach runs and his Universal Studio visits, he needs all those things.
So yeah, just I want you making the decision that's in your best interest. I've known a lot of people that get talked into buying something, and then after they do it, they're kind of hesitant. So that's the main reason that I encourage some caution, is because these salesmen make money by being good at what they do. They can speak persuasively.
They're very good at it. That's why I did not succeed in it.
But if you keep the mindset, I only want to cover the risk I can't afford to take. I have car and renter insurance through them, and by adding life insurance, it reduces the premiums on the other insurance. So I get the life insurance without paying anything else coming out of my pocket. If you can get some of those kinds of discounts, that may be more advantageous to you. Green Bean has his out on medical insurance after 2 17-plus-year-old pugs.
I hear you. Green Bean, I have no doubt about his welfare and how well he's taken care of.
Yeah, Green Bean is kind of a legend in our house.
Yes.
We're like Chuck and Tallulah. We don't let them watch Green Bean's videos because they might be a little jealous. So, yeah, Green Bean's kind of legendary in our house.
I do. You're going to get mad at me about this, but I do have something to say about accidental death and dismemberment insurance. We're both having speaking issues tonight. If you work, you've got workers' comp. If something happens to you on the job, workers' comp takes care of it. If you are participating in a highly dangerous activity, motorcycle riding, paragliding, parachuting, jumping out of planes, AD&D won't cover it because you were doing something you shouldn't have been doing, in their opinion. Most of them have these little clauses in there that say, yeah, we won't cover anything that you're doing that's dangerous. So most of the time that insurance is absolutely useless. Read through it, figure it out for yourself, but
Yeah, the only thing I hate about that is when she said most times.
most times
Statistically,
what?
most time that insurance is useless. Statistically, that most times is 99.9999999%.
I was just
It's
trying.
it's utterly a scam.
It is.
So if you need life insurance, get life insurance. Don't count on AD&D.
Yeah.
Statistically, it is utterly worthless. It's just money in the salesman's pocket. Melissa, just wait till we visit. We
You
absolutely
better.
love that and look forward to that. Absolutely would love that.
Absolutely.
Trying to sit here and think of what else. Some things, kind of big in the news this week, otherwise, were like housing. The press reported housing prices increased over the past month. And just on the show a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about housing prices have decreased. So is the press right and I'm wrong? Was I right and the press wrong, or both? I'm going to go with both because the devil's in the details again. When they say that the housing prices have increased over the past 3 months, they're really talking about the Case-Shiller index. Now, Case-Shiller index. Come on now, let me get this thing up. This is a national home price index, and a lot of people use it as a proxy for home prices across the nation. We'll talk about it in such terms. This past week you saw home prices have increased, and clearly the Case-Shiller index this year we have seen home prices increase. Devil in the details. Case-Shiller is an index of basically 20 cities, 20 big cities: Boston, Chicago, Denver, LA, Miami, San Francisco, DC, Dallas, Atlanta, Minneapolis, Seattle, Tampa, 20 of these big cities, which, let's face it, a big part of the population lives in these areas. But if I look at home prices nationwide, the average sales prices for all houses sold in the US, they've been dropping for several months, and particularly have dropped from, the tail end of 2022. So what's the story? Well, the idea, that best description I can give you is that in the heavily populated areas where there's very limited land, the old adage with real estate is location, location, location. Well, in most of these big cities, there still is high demand and no supply. Absolutely no supply. A lot of people that could in these areas with the high prices were able to refinance at 3% mortgage. So they're just not going to refinance. They're hanging on. They don't want to sell, that kind of thing. So whatever small amount of inventory is available in those cities, well, it goes pretty quick. However, in the further reaches, the suburbia, the flyover America, the rural areas, it's a different story. Prices are declining. Hence, the average sales price declines, whereas the index in the big cities rises. Also, keep in mind the Case-Shiller index is a lagging index. It lags 2 months. That means the data it's reporting is from 2 months ago. So it's a very urban view of residential home prices, and one where the data is kind of behind the current situation. Now, in terms of home mortgage rates, they've fallen fairly significantly. They're down to 6.77% from 8 to 8.5%. So that's, 150, 130 basis point drop in a month. That's pretty steep. Certainly making them, a little bit more palpable to a lot of folks. Now, most estimates will have mortgage rates staying above 6%, but who knows? Who really knows? If Jay Powell is seriously feeling the heat, QT could come to a halt. QE starts up again, as we've talked. You've got the well-known modern monetary, theory keeps government cranking out spending. And if that scenario comes about in a year or two, we'll be in an even bigger mess. Rates will fall. You'll have higher bubbles in the real estate market. Stock market will grow. Everything will seem good up until it's not.
Sorry, Chuck was convinced that I had his round spherical object upstairs and would not stop bugging me trying to get up on the desk to find it.
Have we mentioned that Chunk's pretty persistent when he has something in mind?
Here it is. So I decided to join you down here.
So now we're throwing ball, and all is well in the world.
Chunk is happy now.
Chunk just gave us his market prediction. So you want to hear?
Oh, sure. Thanks. I was just hearing it a few seconds later.
Yeah. So, in terms of home prices, are they going up? Or are they coming down?
Wait, Mama, I can hear you.
I would say both. Yeah, I really probably don't need to hear you either.
Oh, that was funny.
WAP.
It's like, now I'm just getting an echo.
Yeah, it's not like we haven't done this before.
Never. Mm-mm. It's your birthday. It's your birthday.
And yes, thank you for the little background.
Oh,
That's very kind. I just don't like my birthday. Not gonna lie.
mm-mm.
It just feels weird. So, what are the questions y'all have?
Being born feels weird.
Picking one day out of the year and saying things are different on this day just seems weird to me.
They are. It's a celebration of your birth. And you get, no. There's been tuna. We don't, with Clay and his diabetes, we don't do cake around here. Sorry.
So I appreciate the sentiment, but
Trying to keep him alive and healthy.
and also I'm actually trying to lose weight. When I first started, the treatment for diabetes, I lost 20 pounds, 25 pounds. And so I've been, that hit a wall since there. So trying to change some things up, including my diet, and still have a ways to go. A little inconsistent, but I need to drop another 20, 30 pounds. So good Lord willing, I'll get there.
So we had tuna on crackers. Your pescatarian deal. We did the fish.
We did the fish. So do y'all have any other questions?
Tallulah is mad because Chunk
Has the ball.
continuously gets the ball, and when she gets it, it has to be like a big celebration, like she needs a cake. When
She seriously.
I know it is yum. It was yummy. Shh. Hush. I know you're mad. I get it, and he's hogging the ball.
All right. Now listen, if 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, how are you tonight?
Hey, cheerful. We haven't seen you in a while.
That bark sounds like a question.
Yes, yeah.
It's more of a demand. Like, give me attention and get the ball from Chunk so I can get it.
Yeah, Chunk is hogging the ball. Can I please have the ball? And he's jumping up on my leg right now. Y'all can't see this. He's got the ball in his mouth, and he's like, here. And then when I try to grab it, he goes, He's a turd. Oh, well.
Well, there he is. You want to see what Chunk looks? How do you find Chunk in the dark? Move him over this way a little bit.
Nope.
Yeah, camera. How do you find Chunk in the dark? Well,
What?
you throw a ball somewhere, a glowing in the dark ball, and you can find him.
Mm-hmm.
So when we take him out at night, we usually try to make sure he has a ball. Because if he goes in the shadows, you're just not keeping up with him.
They don't want to go out. They just want to chase balls. GB has a lot to say about Chunk and Tallulah. You think so, huh? He won't give me the ball.
Time to walk the dogs. Sounds like they want to go out. They always want to go out because they usually get a little treat.
Yeah, they're just upset about the ball right now. The ball is life. Life is ball.
Green Bean has a lot to say about Chunk and Tallulah's opinions.
He's back up. He won't give me the ball, but he really wants to show it to us. Makes Tallulah so mad.
All right, y'all. I see some, it is the night after Christmas, and some of y'all still have family or others to attend to. We obviously have dogs to attend to.
Yes, constantly. Our cat is let me in, let me out, let me in, let me out.
Yeah, I love the little boogers, but sometimes I wonder, what's the purpose of this? But they are.
Now, my favorite part is that Chunk will oftentimes sleep with me, and then he gets up at like 5:30 and 6 and wakes up Clay to take him out.
He won't wake her up, but he'll come in to wake me up to take him outside.
Yeah, he'll be like, all right, I'm out. Gotta go wake up Daddy.
So if any of y'all wants a dog.
No, he always tries to give my dog away. And you got Phil started on that too. Now he's trying to give their dog away.
Yeah. Chicks and their little dogs. Y'all are hilarious.
You are very welcome, Sky.
Yeah.
I hope it was interesting.
Thank you, Sky. Appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate your encouragement. Certainly appreciate your patience and support. And I do sincerely hope that all of y'all had a great Christmas and are looking forward to a great new year ahead.
In January 9th, don't forget, book club.
Book club.
We will post the Zoom link. How far ahead can you do that? Day or two?
Anytime. Yeah.
Okay. So cheerful. It's going to be for everybody. Just would love to have you guys. It's a cool book. Book club. I know, it's fun.
Yeah, it's a good little roundabout discussion. The book is relatively easy to read, and I believe it's an interesting one for most anybody who has had some difficulty or pain in their life. By C.S. Lewis, who's one of my favorite authors, The Problem of Pain. But it's a very readable book and an interesting book and a good topic. Everybody voted on it. We'll have another poll for next month's book club. And
it is also read or audio on YouTube for free.
Yeah.
So I think we posted that in the last stream. I don't think. Can you find that real quick and put it in the description or the description of the community thing? Next, put the problem. I like that.
Yeah, we will look up the free book on YouTube and post it in the community comments. So it'll be there for everybody.
Yep.
So we'll get that up here shortly. Y'all, thank you again.
We love you
It's been a
guys.
fun night. Good
We had a
seeing
great
y'all.
Christmas. And are we doing Saturday? It's not New Year's Eve.
Yes.
Okay, we'll do Saturday.
Took me a second. So, yes. And we'll look forward to seeing y'all Saturday.
Yes, we will.
So join us. And as always, if you've got any comment, suggestion, please let us know. Please do the YouTube things, like, subscribe, hit, share, recommend your friends, mention us in your will, whatever it takes.
Yeah, it's free to subscribe.
Y'all have a great
Oh
evening.
Lord, here we go. Chunk back.
Our time is up.
We got to go throw a ball.
We thank you for yours. Blessings to you.